Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Speed Street podcast. For those new listeners and viewers, welcome. We appreciate you. Your eyes, your ears, they mean a lot to us. We're trying to talk about IndyCar racing here. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that sport, but we love it. We're obsessed with it. I myself participate in the racing series. I drive the number 76, Juncos Hollinger Racing Chevrolet. In the NTT IndyCar series. My co-host Chase Holden here. He is becoming ever more knowledgeable in the sport of IndyCar racing. We are here to talk about a pretty exciting week last week. The Indy 500 Open Test happened last week. There's a lot to talk about. Some crazy stuff happened that I honestly, some kind of wild, just wild. I mean, we had two cars, Sato going into the wall like a missile. Kyle Larson had his first accident at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And just, some speeds that maybe people didn't think that we were going to do. All of a sudden, technical delay on day one, just a whole mess of things to talk about. And we also get to prepare for another race week. We are racing once again. Thank God we are finally back. Our schedule issues are forever in our past because now we are on track every single weekend, basically until football season starts, it feels like. So we'll get heavy into the summer here. We're going to have a killer month of May coming up. But Chase, a lot to get to here with the Indy Open Test. I want to start there. We're going to give our top three in no particular order predictions for the Barber Motorsports Park race as well. But we had our first taste of Indy 500 action. And Chase, it was live on YouTube, which is everyone can be happy about that. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of it?
For one, I just want to say that everybody that was in the chat during both days, you got rowdy, you got wild, and I
heard it was crazy
you.
in there. There were some words being thrown around.
It was kind of a madhouse, but it's what you. I wouldn't expect anything less for the Indy 500. So it just goes to show how important this event is, how big this event is with the sport itself, and it is just the crown jewel of racing worldwide. If I had to say, they were averaging, I mean, for a live stream, I'm going to say this, averaging between 16 and 17,000 viewers on a live stream is pretty damn hard. So being able to do that for IndyCar, I think was a massive success. The broadcast was great. And getting to just see the cars on track, right? Getting to see the action, it's a little teaser for what's to come because, like you said, we're going to have a lot more of that style. We're really looking forward to seeing if that live streaming continues. That's what we need. That's what we want. Just as much access that we can have for people that aren't at the track to be able to watch worldwide to see what's happening. I enjoyed every second of it. Did get to watch a little bit on both days and interacted a little bit with some of the fans and a lot of Speed Street in the chat. I will say that. A lot of Speed Street.
I love that.
Fellas and ladies in the chat. So can't thank them enough. And I'm really interested to hear from the driver's eyes what this test was like. So like let's just get right into it. I'm ready to hear the story. What were the 2 days like for you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there is a lot to talk about. I wasn't sure kind of how the 2 days would go and what we would learn, but we learned a great deal. And some of the action that we kind of saw on track and race running, qualifying running, kind of a lot of small things to talk about. So let's just go through real quick, if you want, test results, because we know how not realistic those are.
Very important.
But this seems to be like a big deal, these tests, but I can promise you some of these laps, and a lot of people are like, if for some reason I'm first or second, people are like, oh, must have found a big toe. Scott Dixon was quickest on the first day. That guy was hunting for toes. Like that guy was, I literally saw him backing off in the middle of traffic as he was right in front of me. And he got big toe lap. And I'm like, oh man, this guy literally just did that on purpose just to go first. So everyone wants to have their day. All the pros, all the legends at the front. Doesn't matter who you are. The car still has to be fast enough to do it, and these guys did it. But Scott Dixon was quickest on day one. Joseph Newgarden and Takuma Sato kind of already showing that strength that we saw on day two a little bit before his car exploded into a million pieces. Marcus Armstrong, really impressive. Colton Herta, Alex Palou, Elio Castroneves, Felix Rosenquist, Marco Andretti, Kyle Kirkwood, Kyle Larson, me, 12th. Scott McLaughlin, Graham Rahal, Devlin DiFrancesco. I don't know if you noticed that, but only 3 Chevys in the top 15.
Wow.
Wild. Pato O'Ward, Alex Rossi, Will Power, Marcus Erickson, Louis Foster, David Malukas, Ed Carpenter, Kevin Simpson, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Stingray Robb, Christian Lundgaard, Christian Rasmussen, Robert Schwartzman, Santino Ferrucci, Jack Harvey. Jack Harvey's back. Nolan Siegel, Callum Ilott, Renus VK, and 34th was Jacob Abel. So that was day one, right? All right, day one. Basically just I would say, full-on delay, first of all. That was crazy. We all got out there, tried to do our install laps, and everyone's jacked up like, wow, let's go, let's get out there. Then we have to sit around for like 4 hours. That was one of the most painful delays. This test has like a black cloud over it or something. We've had terrible weather the last couple of years, and then all of a sudden, we had no timing and scoring, no internet, some networking issues, which again are the worst because the only thing I know how to do with my network is unplug it and replug it back in, right? And I'm sure it's a little bit more complex than that. So honestly, I got to give credit to our series officials. Everyone was like, oh, they should have been more prepared. Like, how did we not go through this the day before? But also, stuff happens, as they say. Another S word can be used there as well, but stuff happens and you got to react on the fly. And honestly, I'm impressed that we even got back fired up and at the time that we did. So we appreciate our folks, whoever was getting in the internet weeds and whoever was in the technical offices trying to get that fixed. We appreciate that. But yeah, getting right into day one, really interesting situation for us. We kind of were driving around, getting a handle on our balance and figuring out what I wanted out of the car. And, this, and I don't know, maybe I don't know if I should say this, but maybe I will anyway. But sometimes on these cars, when you drive around for a while and you kind of have the same handling issue and you try a few things and you're like, man, there's like fundamentally, there's still a push in the car or it's still crazy loose. It often means that there's something wrong. Something is amiss. And we kind of were going through a lot of things on day one and nothing was really making us better. It was just kind of like, man, how can we not fix this issue that we had with the handling of the car? And at some point you have to try different front wings. So the front wings on these cars are obviously built and supposed to be exactly the same. Obviously, if you in a race, you got to change one. You expect what you put on to be exactly the same. At Indy, though, the smallest things matter. And when we put on our spare front wing, all of our problems were solved. And that might not make sense to anyone technically, but these front wings are different. And every front wing has a different aero capability. Every front wing has a different COP percentage, which is center of pressure, which means front grip. And we struggled most of the day running what we thought was our primary front wing. And it ended up being a large percentage less front grip than our spare front wing. So
wow,
completely changed our day, completely swapped everything over. All right, guess we're running the spare front wing from now on. And that's what you go through at Indy. Everyone's like, oh, everything's the same. It's not even close to the same. Everyone's got different bits and bobs here and there. You've got so much different suspension pieces. So many different things you can do inside the gearbox and around the gearbox and uprights to make these cars fast at Indy. So there's a lot there, and I'm glad we found that. That for us was really good. We got a decent lap in towards the end of the day. Obviously, we were 12th, but didn't really push for that. We were just trying to learn. But an early trend, obviously everyone wants to see trends. I don't want to read much into day one at all. I think you see a lot of Honda power up front. And that was interesting, I would say. Chevy's been pretty dominant. Chevy locked out the front row with one specific team. And day one, there was one, Graham Rahal touched the wall a little bit, just had a little bit of a scuffle with the wall. So people, in traffic, these cars, it's a battle. It is a battle more so than last year to try to get them to handle the right way. Graham Rahal was a perfect example of oh my gosh, these guys are we're still on the edge. I promise you. It's crazy on the edge. I would say our traffic lap times are a little bit slower than they were last year, but we are on edge in these cars. And it was very interesting to just see how the day played out. And then I want to get right into day two. Because day two was a big moment for everyone because they turned up the boost. And I tell you what, turning up the boost all of a sudden in April, that was a surprising way to do things. And I cannot believe people went as serious as they did. Like Takuma Sato going out there and basically balls to the wall. That guy was ripping fast.
He sent
and then
it.
crashing their primary car. That's I don't really stand that because there were some teams, to give you guys an example, there are some teams that just went out there on race downforce. I know for a fact a couple cars that you saw maybe towards the bottom of the timesheets and day two, and we'll read through the timesheets on day two as well, which I have a problem with how they did their whole results of this day anyway on the internet. But anyway, we don't read too much into results. But there are teams running complete race downforce, not even close to a qualifying sim. So there's really nothing, you can't fully take away much from this. But Penske is still crazy fast. So we'll get into the results real quick. So day two, and this I have a bit of a problem with because day two, the only results that they put out were essentially the results from the morning. They're open test results day two that they combine the afternoon and the morning. There's 60 horsepower more in the morning. So that there's going to be nothing. We were fourth in the afternoon, felt pretty good. But the only results they put out is of the qualifying sim stuff. So I didn't really understand. I feel like they should have just put separate sessions hey, this is qualifying boost, and then this was the race running session. But whatever. Again, we can't read too much into results. Obviously, Chase, we got to remember that.
You got to stick to the single stat sheets. That's what we like. Time.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know. But anyway, Scott McLaughlin was quickest. Once again, obviously, we saw how fast he was last year, 232.6. Now, that was a tow lap. The fastest non-tow lap was Takuma Sato, 232.5. That guy, that's crazy. That is way faster than we thought. I would say that's way faster than I thought we were going to go because of just the added weight. And the car, honestly, in race trim and race boost, it did feel slower. To be honest with you, it felt slower, accelerating, just kind of felt just a little bit sluggish because of the added weight. But when you add the boost, it was pretty juicy. So not too bad. So Scott
felt
McLaughlin
normal again, a little bit.
A little bit normal. Yeah.
Okay.
Scotty Mack, Takuma Sato, Will Power, Felix Rosenquist, Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Kyle Kirkwood, Colton Herta, Joseph Newgarden. In the top 10, Kiffin Simpson. Louis Foster with the Rahal team. Again, 2 Rahal cars in the top 11. Pretty impressive. Marcus Ericsson, Stingray Robb, Pato O'Ward, Alex Rossi, Graham Rahal, Marcus Armstrong, Christian Rasmussen, Devlin DiFrancesco, Santino Ferrucci, myself, Christian Lundgaard, Elio Castroneves, Rinus VK, Robert Schwartzman, David Malukas, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Jacob Abel, Jack Harvey, Ed Carpenter, Callum Isla, Marco Andretti, Kyle Larson, obviously he was in the wall, and Nolan Siegel was dead last. Obviously, we know that. Again, when you see these results, this is just pure results. These are not no tows. These are with tow. These are doesn't matter what tow you had. It doesn't matter what draft you had. Those are the results. But yeah, I would say so. I'm going to give you guys I'm going to go with it right now. After seeing 2 days of testing, and we'll get it a little bit more about day two and kind of what we thought qualifying trim wise and how we used the hybrid. I hate to say it, but it's going to be a Penske lockout. Front row lockout again. Penske front row lockout, I think, by the largest margin we've ever seen to P4. And I hate to say that to you, and I don't want to be, but I felt like giving out a nice take like that because I want to be wrong. So I'm going to say that, hoping to be wrong. But when I look at the level of downforce those cars were running, and when you look at how fast they were going, Penske cars are literally not even in the same category. So I respect what they've done in their shop, in the gearbox dynos, in the upright rooms, all the whatever they've done. I mean, it is astounding how good those cars are. So again, Penske, without a doubt, the team to beat going into it. What do you think about that take, Chase?
What I want to know really is, are you basing this more upon just like what you've seen this year versus what happened last year, and you're just like saying because of what went down last year, and you're seeing little things now that you're ready to make that call? Because I don't know if I would be confident enough to make a call like that right now. So it's like, what do you know? You know what I mean?
I have eyes. I'm out here looking, and when you see the Joseph Newgarden car roll down pit lane with a little wicker on the rear wing in qualifying trim, which is basically only something you use in the race, you know those cars are pretty tied down. So I feel like it's something that I had to make a take, because I looked at it, and we are all looking at how much, because when you roll out of the pit lane in qualifying trim, you can see what people are running downforce wise. You can see the strakes on the floor, either on or off. If the strakes are off, you know you're in qualifying trim. You're trying to find some speed out of it. Everyone can see the rear wing angle. I mean, you don't have the exact number, but you can see if it's got, if it's nose down, nose up. So you can see kind of generally what people are running downforce wise. Only thing you can't see are ride heights, right? Ride heights, you can trim a lot via ride height and get speed out of the car via ride heights. But yeah, I like the Ganassi cars are very fast, and there's a ton of Hondas in the top 10, and Honda might have brought some juice. Like they look like they're all a little juiced up, but I just, knowing what I know and knowing what I saw, I think those guys are having to have pretty comfortable 4-lap runs, and they're going to be battling between us. Between themselves.
So
now,
how can
maybe it's a different guy than Joseph, or maybe it's a different guy than Scott McLaughlin on the pole. Who knows? Maybe it's power. Maybe it's Newgarden's turn. But man, Scotty Mack looks. I mean, that guy's driving around a laser rocket missile shooter. Like that thing is crazy.
Such a classic too, like the Yellow Submarine, right? Like that's
it does look good going fast. It does look good going fast.
It does. So like, what can you take away from that? Really, like, I mean, what are all the other teams like? Obviously, you're not the only person seeing this out there. So how are you and your team taking some of that in and using it maybe to your advantage? And how are these other teams doing that?
Well, I think what it gives you a good idea of is like, hey, we're going to have to find some raw pace out of the car. So that means, all right, what can we do, body fit wise? There's a couple things that we found in our car that will certainly make us easily faster, and that's what testing's for. But it also kind of gives us an idea of what range of speed are we going to be operating in. So to be honest with people, when we went out there for qualifying trim, we were pretty heavy on downforce. So I was actually one of the very few who got a full 4-lap run in with no tow, nothing. And use of the hybrid was really interesting as well, because I don't know how much I'm really allowed to say about what like strategies are good for hybrid usage, and I hope I won't really get in trouble with it, but like the hybrid is most efficient on at the speedway when it's fully charged. So when you have 100% state of charge, you can go the fastest. And realistically, since you're trying to be flat during qualifying, there's not really an opportunity to regen if you use it on lap one. So a lot of people were like, oh, maybe we just use it all on lap one and then just kind of get to the end of the run. That's actually overall potentially a little bit slower, because when you're at 0% SOC, or state of charge, the car doesn't quite go as fast. So there's several different strategies that people are looking into. You're like, oh, maybe I use it 20% per lap, maybe 10%. Again, running the car at seems to be 100% state of charge is the most efficient. So, for my example, like we've looked at Indy 500 qualifying runs for a long time, and the last lap is usually probably the slowest because you're burning tires. The first lap's always the heater. My last lap was my fastest lap because I burned that hybrid all on the last lap. Just bang, use the boost. And so it definitely counts for something. So that's why I've seen a lot of articles where people are like, hey, this is actually really important the way you use the hybrid. And it is. This is going to play a lot into who gets the pole, into who makes the fast 12, into who probably makes the race. So there are certainly a lot of ways to go about doing it. We then tried to trim out a little bit more as it got a little hotter. And as soon as we felt kind of like, all right, traffic is bad. Like when you get out there in traffic, you cannot, when these cars are in qualifying trim and that much boost, you cannot really run in dirty air. Like the dirty air is so dangerous. It makes you almost crash all the time. So we got out there, tried to trim a little bit more just for curiosity. And we might have fallen out of we might have made a change that wasn't as good for us. And I thought I was going to crash. So we're like, we're done running. We don't need to run anymore. We're not qualifying in April. And we've got, we did enough running to get some good data. And that was it. And so when I went out and when I saw Kyle Larson crash, I'm like, why are we doing that? It was kind of wild. And I believe I know why. When I looked at Kyle Larson's crash, he said he got real tight, NASCAR terms. He got a little bit understeered straight into the wall. So that can happen sometimes when you forget to move the weight jacker. So I don't know if everyone knows, but we can use the weight jacker in a fast jacker type situation. And what that means is when we come off of turn 4, we press a button, it lowers the rear of the car for efficiency down the straight. And you got to raise the car back up going into turn 1 so it can turn properly. Same thing out of 2, lower the rear, raise the rear going into 3. Now, if you forget to raise it back up, you get that amount of understeer that Kyle got. And so what I'm thinking is obviously he's still new to this car. Maybe he forgot to jack the rear back up, and that's what caused that crash. Now, thankfully, it wasn't a massive crash, but definitely, it was good for Kyle to get that out of the way, as I'm sure he said. But that could have been the problem there. Again, I don't know these things, but it did seem like enough of an understeer to be like, probably just maybe the weight jacker didn't come back up.
That makes sense. Yeah,
it does make sense because you need that to turn. But then the Takuma Sato thing, I definitely, we know Takuma is no attack, no chance. Like that guy is full beans all the time, maximum attack. And I respect that. But when your car is that fast, I have a bit of I'm a little bit, I don't know why you're going out there to wreck the thing. I find that really hard to believe. And there were, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of teams are out there just running race downforce, just getting a couple laps in.
Right.
Because again, no one's getting paid in April. What did you think when you saw that? I mean, that was a big one.
Yeah, Sato just wants to send it, man. Like I love Takuma Sato. Won this in the COVID year, 2020.
Yep.
I remember watching that at a Buffalo Wild Wings.
2-time champ.
Yeah. So that was the first one that I ever watched on television was in that year. And I just know that I remember there was a tweet that went out where it was showing his lap time, and I was just like, Sato sends it. And it was the next lap gone, and everybody was like, "Great job, Chase. Good job,
man."
And I'm like, "Dang,
that was on you."
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. And I hope not because I love the guy to death. But it's like you said, man, he knows he's out there. He's out there for it all. And that's a driver, man. That's somebody that's when he gets behind the wheel of a car, it doesn't matter kind of where you're at. You just want to see how far you can take it.
Man, yeah.
And I feel like that's got to be the spirit of Takuma Sato. The other thing that has
I respect it because that guy was ripping the I mean, he was flying.
Yeah.
But I'm like, geez, dude, it's April.
It's tough.
If a rookie made a mistake like that, you know how much crap they'd get? If a rookie went out there and was ripping and he crashed, they're like, oh, a rookie mistake. It's like, look, IndyCar, I have it in my notes. IndyCar is hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how experienced you are. Now, again, I think someone maybe needed to talk to him and be like, hey, look, we're good, dog. Maybe we don't need to go do this one. But it's also testing, and testing is so important. But if you saw that onboard video, I'm actually super glad they put that onboard video up of the crash. 94 G impact, right? Crazy. That's a ton. People freak out in Europe land when, an F1 crash is 25 Gs.
Right.
Sato smacked the wall 95 Gs. Like, yep, we're good, dog. Like, I mean, this is just, it's a completely different realm of physical and personal capability at the Indy 500 over anything else in the world. It's crazy. But if you see that video, you're like, it happens so fast at Indy. And I want people to look at that video like a couple different times. Smooth entry. As soon as you lose the rear, you're never getting it back. And there are some people that have snap oversteer moments. That would be a snap oversteer moment.
Yes.
There are some people who can have slides later in the corner that maybe they can catch them, but that is the limit we are fighting in these cars. It is absolute razor edge, and when it goes wrong, it can go wrong in such a massive way, but that's what makes the Indy 500 so challenging, and I'm really glad they put that onboard video up there, honestly, because it got so many views, it got so many people talking, and again, I still don't understand the point of that, but he's also won 2 Indy 500s, so he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
he could wreck 100 cars. He's still got he's still got 2 rings and a bunch more milk than I do. So
yeah, that's a guy I would love to talk to. By the way, I would love to have him on the show one day.
We should have him on the show, actually. Yeah.
The one question I would have for him, really, and like I saw it that was put out there, like they were talking about his hats. He wears very long bibbed hats. Have you noticed that? Like
he
his
does.
Hats, they're kind of like the fish hat from the kid from the Sandlot. He had the extra long bib.
A lot of sponsors on there, too. He's got a lot of logos on that hat.
It's got to be that. I don't know. But I find him fascinating and definitely would love to get to know his mentality. And it would really help answer a lot of these questions because, yeah, watching that onboard, it's just like, how much quicker could he have, like, tried to snap back to save the car?
Impossible.
It's like, yeah,
impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's nuts about it.
Yeah. And, so that definitely made for kind of a wild morning and just, two really talented drivers having issues like that just goes to show you what the edge that we're fighting. And then so the rest of that day is just heavy race running. We're getting deep into it, reset on the timesheets. Here we go. We're going to get into the race running stuff again. And, it's really interesting. I'm trying to give people a good idea of what we get into. We only have a certain amount of tires that we can use, but a lot of people got out there running deep in the pack. And I will say, to be honest with folks, it is harder than last year when you're deep in the pack. I would say it is harder to generate momentum, to generate a run. Now, the hybrid element is interesting in race running, but I would say it's going to be more effective in qualifying trim because that'll kind of really determine what's your big lap. But when it comes to the race running, the one thing I would say is that if you're on a last lap battle, you certainly don't want to have zero battery, or zero state of charge. So that's going to be interesting. We can manually regen, like we can press a button or pull a paddle to manually regen. But when you manually regen, it's almost like you open a parachute up behind the car. So you can feel the car kind of go slower as you manually regen. But that certainly will play into the end of the race. It'll play into outlaps. It'll play into just how cycles, through pit cycles, how that works. So I will say that every road course we've gone to so far, you're using the hybrid in 2 or 3, 4 spots, and that's pretty much it. Like that's all you can do. It doesn't really make a pass or not make a pass. You got to use it. But Indy, I think there are many ways to use it, and it's going to be interesting. And it's not going to, everyone's going to be using it to attack. And if you're attacking, someone's going to use it to defend, of course. But if you both burn out your state of charge and then the third car in line has 100 and he's ripping off a 2, I don't know, maybe that presents so there's definitely different feelings when you're at 0% state of charge. You can feel the power difference when you're at 100% state of charge. You can feel the power difference when you're regenning. You can feel the power difference. And when you're deploying, you can feel the power difference. So
it's safe to say it's an exciting new strategy element, maybe?
Certainly for an oval, for a super speedway, yeah, because you never want to lose momentum. And there were cars, like I have in my notes too, Christian Rasmussen moment, because Christian almost crashed in front of me in a while. I went up to him when the day was over and I was like, my dog, that was you in front of me, right? Like you hit that little curb in turn 2 and had a big moment. He's like, yep, that was me. I was like, oh man, I am glad you saved that. He had one of those moments where you get down to the curb, hit the curb, whoop, whoop, big, almost half spin straight into the pits because obviously you scare yourself immediately, and that was tough. But
drift check.
We're out there busting our butts to make these cars work in traffic, and I cannot wait to get back to the speedway because these 2 days gave us such a great list of new ideas for the next time out. So I'm curious to see. Let me know in the comments kind of what you thought of it. This was a really, really interesting couple days. But I still want to say Penske's, the standouts for me were Penske. The Penske cars are insanely fast. It's hard to tell who is kind of at the bottom end, who's maybe on the yikes train. You saw a couple of the coin cars back there, but then Renus had a couple good runs too. The Prema cars were okay. So there's no standout yikes who's going to make the race type team yet.
That's exciting.
That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But it does look like, I think the biggest thing was Rahal looks good. Rahal they are not struggling for the same speed that they were the last couple of years. So
that's great.
They clearly did make a difference. But
it's an important team to be in this thing. It is.
Oh yeah. And so we'll see what happens. When all the tricks are put away and you just have to lay it down for qualifying, I'm excited to see who's actually got it, who's got the juice. But right now, I don't think anyone's challenging Penske. I really don't. And maybe the Hondas have been saving something. I don't know. Maybe they got some juice in the bag. I'm happy to be with Chevy. I think I trust these guys. The Chevrolet guys are just so dialed in on producing when they need to at Indy, and I'm pumped to be with the Chevrolet group. And we'll just certainly see what happens. I think
keep rocking the bow tie.
I'm excited to see. So anyway,
I'm excited for Barber.
This is going to be a longer episode. We appreciate you folks listening, but we got to get to Barber. We've got a race week coming up. Very, very excited for this one. Live Sunday on Fox. You guys don't want to miss it. I promise you it's going to be a good one. I watched the race from last year again. Last year's race was pretty exciting. I'm not going to lie. Last year's race had a lot of contact, a lot of passing. 1:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox on Sunday. Don't miss it. A lot of teams tested here. A lot of teams tested at Barber. We were not one of those cars that tested here. But, a little bit of a different tire to last year. So to let people know, it's the same red tire as last year, but it's a different primary tire. So this year's primary tire is much harder than last year's primary tire. So that'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But an interesting strategy race. Maybe a 2-stop if you save, 3-stop if you're pushing fully. What has you most excited about Barber, Chase?
Just the element of Barber. I say it like this. You got to be a tough SOB to win at Barber. Okay. For me, this is a race that I've done a lot of research. It's technically in IndyCar. This could be considered my home track being from Louisiana.
There you go. Yeah.
So I take a lot of pride in it. I love the track. I went to the test. We did see Will Power win that. Rasmussen actually coming in second was interesting. He's, thick neck guy. You got to kind of have a stocky build. You want to kind of be pretty thick.
Very physically
you're a pretty
tough.
stocky guy.
Tough physical track. Barber will beat the crap out of you.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to watch, and that's a good piece of information to remember, too. The thing that I'm most excited about is, will Scott McLaughlin be the first driver to win this race 3 times in a row? Okay.
You were waiting for a lawnmower to go by or something.
Yeah, the lawnmower was going by. Will Scott McLaughlin be the driver to win this thing 3 times in a row in history? This race started in 2010. We have had only 4 drivers win this back-to-back, and that is Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and Scott McLaughlin. So we have 3 Penske drivers that have done the back-to-back and then a Andretti driver that has done a back-to-back. So
and as you said, not a lot of different winners at Barber.
Not at all. You had Pato win in 22, Alex Palou won in 2021, Takuma Sato 2019, 2020, there was no race. So I won't go too deep back into the weeds, but this is a big moment in the storyline of IndyCar right now. Scott McLaughlin has a chance to make history at being the first driver to ever win this thing 3 times in a row. This is essentially a Barber three-peat, possibly. So I know he's got to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And let's talk about his shoulders. He's winning this race for a reason. Dude likes to get swole, okay?
Yep.
So can he do it? I don't know. I want your opinion. What do you think?
You know what? After watching the race last year, it's going to be hard to beat those thirsty threes. I tell you, he was absolutely on it last year. And, those Penske cars are quite strong at road courses like this, but I'm excited to see what happens. I think you're going to see some surprises this weekend. I think you're going to see hopefully, finally, some full course yellows. Now, I know it's kind of weird to hope for that, but
it's kind of the place for it.
It does mix things up. It does kind of bunch the field back up. It gets everyone back in the program and get kind of some different strategy shuffles. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I think I just cannot wait to get back racing. We need to have a weekend for us personally that just has no problems. We need to finally get through a weekend with no issues. We need to have a good, solid, clean start to the month of May. But let's get right into our predictions because it's a long episode. We've got a great interview with David Land coming up that I think you're all going to want to pay attention to. A great IndyCar conversation, just a great conversation about how we better the sport. That'll be coming up here soon. I think I forgot to mention that at the beginning of the show. So if you're now just realizing, oh my gosh, we have a guest interview. Yes, we do.
You definitely did, but we saved it.
We did save it. So let's get to some Barber predictions. Chase, I'll go first with a driver for me. I have to take Scott McLaughlin, and I know it's easy and it's easy to do, but I'm going Scotty Mac for my first pick for this weekend.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that's the easiest one to go. So we'll now have 4 that will be different. But it's Scotty Mac, man. I mean, that is the first guy that you want to pick. It's just because of what we just talked about right here. A chance for three-peat. The thirsty threes want the 3. Okay.
That's true.
That's a great slogan for the race this weekend. I hope he uses it. Also, too, it's just there's this, he hasn't got a win yet. Penske's really just been, kind of, it's weird. It's weird that we're already this far in. And
will we see a Chevy winner finally?
Yeah.
A Chevy winner.
Yeah. It's so this is definitely the place for that. So Scott McLaughlin, the Thirsty 3 camp, I think that's the no-brainer pick for the weekend.
I'm going to go with one here that might be a bit of a surprise, but I want to see some differences. I want to see something kind of go just, I don't know, outside the box a little bit, but I'm going to go Marcus Armstrong on the podium this weekend. Going to go Armstrong. I think he's kind of been right there. And I actually got to chat with his engineer recently, Angela Ashmore, a very smart person at the Purdue Grand Prix recently. And at least I think that's his engineer. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, they've had a great start to the season. I could see him in the top 3, so I'm going to go with Marcus Armstrong.
Okay, my second pick I'm going to move over to the McLaren camp a little bit for a podium pick. I'm going to go with Christian Lundgaard. Lundgaard,
keep his podium streak alive.
Exactly. Yeah, he's got the podium streak going on right now. He's kind of been like the hot McLaren guy. Coming into 2025, he was definitely down at the test. He had some decent test results from what I had saw, and it just seems like he has a pretty firm understanding of this track. So in this machine, where I do think this will be a big bounce back weekend for Chevy, I think Christian could be the guy that has a little bit of that fire under him to kind of claim, plant his flag in the McLaren camp. So I'm gonna go with Lundgaard as my second one.
I am purely picking picks now to just not pick Alex Palou. I know that he's probably going to be on the podium. He might win by an hour. I don't know, but I hope not. I'm going to go Alexander Rossi. I know that doesn't seem like something I would do, but I know that ECR has been on pole at Barber. They have had some speed at Barber. Rinus VeeKay was quite fast there last year. And Alex Rossi has been qualifying that car quite well. Hasn't quite put the races together yet, but I believe Alex Rossi could be in with a shot here with the podium. They have been spending a lot of money over there. They have been developing a lot of things, and more investment into a team usually ends up being more speed. So they've always been fast at Barber. We've seen that before with Renus, and not really myself when I was there. We qualified there a couple times, but I had everything go wrong in the races that could have gone wrong there. So I'm hoping for a fresh weekend for myself. But yeah, Alex Rossi, I think he's going to have a good weekend.
All right, I like it. My third pick, I'm going to have to do another Penske driver, and it's going to be Will Power. Will Power, right. He is a 2-time winner at this track. He also, technically, along with Joseph, could be in contention for 3 wins here, which would be a record, but not a consecutive record. But with Will Power, he did really well in the test here. I think they figured out a lot, and I know that he needs to get that momentum going as well, coming off of the season he had last year. He wants to kind of keep, the shine rolling. So I do hope to see Will Power on the podium. I do think we will probably see him on the podium, especially if him and Scott are kind of working together a little bit. But I also know that when they get out there on the track, they can get a little squirrely out there with each other. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But that'll be my third pick. It seems like I think I went full Chevy, dude. I think I went all bow tie. Right. Yeah.
It's time. So anyway, let's I actually just got a message real quick. You will see, for kind of those who get into the real dirty details, you'll see a bit of a shift in the practice 1 format, FP1. Usually that's on FS1, maybe FS2, but this weekend it'll be a 40-minute session for all cars, which is 5 minutes less than previous sessions, and then 2 12-minute group sessions, similar to like our qualifying groups, which are 12 minutes, which are 2 more minutes per group. So nice. A bit of a shift in how we'll practice at Barber. I think the series is trying to figure out a bit better of a way for us to use our tires and to take advantage of track time. So have a look at that. That'll be interesting. That'll be a little bit different. But yeah, I think with that, we can get to our guest interview for this week. I think we kind of went through most of what I wanted to talk about. A lot of Indy 500 discussion that we got through. I think there's a couple more things I'm sure that we'll discuss once we get through the Indy GP. But yeah, really, really cool to get out on track. And yeah, we never really went through the afternoon race session at Indy where we were 4th quickest and the fastest Chevy. But we had a decent day on the second half of the afternoon. It's fine if no one wants to pay attention to it. That's cool. There were no results sheets put out because we don't need to put out results for that one. We were out there just doing race running. So race running, though, to be the fastest Chevy and to be 4th, kind of up there in the sharp end was nice for us in the 76 wagon. So appreciate that. But let's get to a conversation now with David Land, who big YouTube channel, honestly, and for someone to have a YouTube channel of that magnitude for basically just covering motorsports is actually pretty impressive. So, to have that just felt like a good conversation to have with someone who also wants to see the betterment of this sport. So here is racing media human / YouTuber, David Land. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we have a great preview episode, obviously, that you have already heard about the Barber Motorsports Park race weekend coming up. But Elio Castroneves couldn't be on the show this week, so we went with someone else who is probably of equal fame, of equal stature in the motor racing community. Someone who, when I said this man's name in the engineering office today, that he would be on my show, the reaction was, oh, wow. David Land, big YouTube channel guy. If you're not subscribed to David Land on the YouTubes, please give him a subscription because he's almost to 100K, and that's a big deal. You get a placard, you get some things that are cool. But David, you know a lot about our sport, and that's why I wanted to have you here. We've been talking. There's been a lot of discussions lately because we've had too many weeks off where there's not racing to talk about, which we all know. So I appreciate you being here, but I want you to kind of give people real quick first how you got into IndyCar racing, why you care about it the way you do, and what made you want to start a YouTube channel to talk about motorsport.
My God. Well, you gassed me up enough. I mean, I only have 4 less Indy 500 wins than Helio Castroneves. So
that's true. I mean, same. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's 3 people combined for 0 Indy 500 wins in this call. So that's great.
True.
Kind of killing
so
it.
I guess the very short background would be that my family's always gone to the Indianapolis 500. It's always been extremely important. My grandmother bought our block of tickets back in the 1980s. My grandfather had been going since the 30s. So that was something that was always very important to me growing up with my family. My dad worked very briefly in the IRL for PDM Racing and then later IMKI Racing. But that was essentially, in 1998, he stopped working in the sport. So that was kind of where my direct connection got severed. But I always remained a fan and very, very hardcore. I mean, it almost became my identity. I mean, people knew me at school as the racing guy. And, I think we all probably had that. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's not unique, but as time went on, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. And, my dream was always to be a driver. That was never realistic. I just didn't have the way to do that. So I was always looking for a way in. And throughout my schooling, I was doing journalism and broadcasting. And, I started my YouTube channel back in 2008, really just as like a hobby thing. It was
08.
08.
Wow.
2008. Yeah, what were you doing in 2008?
Skip Barber National Championship year. That was my Skip Barber National Championship winning year, 2008. Big
wish
year.
I would have made a video about that. We could have connected way earlier, but
big year.
But it was really just where I would upload school projects, or I would fart around, make like a Lego stop motion. I would do stupid things. As time went on, I realized I had to get a real job. You know what I mean? When you get older, life started throwing me some curveballs where I was really kind of in a bad way. I was living in my uncle's attic. I was working at McDonald's. I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And I began to think, well, there are people that are making a living on YouTube. Is there a way that I can translate this passion and knowledge that everyone my entire life has acknowledged that I have of racing and be able to make a career out of it? And lo and behold, my life choices have led me to the Speed Street podcast. So I must be doing something right.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think what's interesting about that, and there might be people actually who are tuning into this show right now who don't know anything about you or who you are, which probably not, honestly, because if you're listening to this show, you've probably seen a David Land video or something on the internet because, I mean, let's be honest, we don't have a ton of you out there. There are not a ton of folks that have dedicated their time and certainly have dedicated enough time to gather. I mean, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. People might think that's that. As someone who is now trying to do the YouTubes, that's a lot of people, and even YouTube recognizes it as a lot of people because they send you a big thing, a plaque, a big trophy, essentially. So, for those who don't know, I would say go check it out. But for those who do, there are a lot of opinions on David, and a lot of people have been requesting in my comments, like, hey, you got to get David Land on the show. And I'm like, all right, well, let's have a discussion because we're obviously all trying. I think we all have, both Chase is here obviously as well. We all want to see the sport that we love kind of go to the highest level possible. I think we've all seen it go through several different arenas of happiness and not happiness. However, there are still a lot of people in probably both of our comments who are like, well, racing 40 years ago used to be like this. I'm like, well, that's not what it is anymore. So, David, what would you say is when you post everything about, IndyCar, you dive into the hot topics, you get into everything, what has been the biggest kickback, you would say, from folks that, what do you think the general public wants from IndyCar? I know that's a very broad question, but realistically, that's kind of what we're all trying to figure out. What do you guys want? What do we want to see? Because I think there's a list of 10 things you could do, but is there a way for you to summarize, hey, let's get this?
I think my biggest criticism right now for IndyCar, and I have a few, but I think if there's something you can, because one thing that you always talk about, and you're right to point it out, Connor, is that we have to focus on things that we can control right now. Yes, we can talk chassis, we can talk schedule, but those are things that cannot be solved right this second.
Nope.
One thing that I think we can do, and this is on me, this is on you, this is on everybody, is I think what right now IndyCar doesn't have, that many other racing series do have right now, is a constant flow of content. When there isn't a race, what are we talking about? More often than not, it goes into that negative space, especially when it's a long break. That's what I've noticed. I'm sure you guys see it reflected in my content. And I don't know exactly what the answer is to that. Is it a web show of some kind that IndyCar produces that's a little more positive, but at least, has some sort of an edge to keep people going? I don't know.
Let's define content, because I think there's a lot of social posts, because I mean, even me, I don't know if people remember, but I literally wrote down notes on how many social posts each racing series, each stick and ball sport do like per week. We have definitely achieved that.
Yes.
But define kind of like what you mean. Is like, because you said weekly show. That's something that I agree with. Like NASCAR has something on FS1 probably every 10 minutes. Kevin Harvick show or something. Is that kind of what you mean?
Absolutely. Just
or like
something,
a sports segment, like something on. Give us 10 minutes on Sports Center every week.
Something to spark discussion. That's what we need. We need a driver to go on and say something outrageous that we all go, we have to make I need to make a video about this. You guys need to go. We need to talk about this on the podcast. Because right now we don't really have that. And when it does happen, it's kind of decentralized. There's not really a way where we all because you look at Formula One, it's the greatest example of this. How much drama have you seen around the Toro Rosso seat? It's unbelievable. And this is a car that's never going to win a race. This is a car that is at best the sixth place car on a race weekend. And yet the entire Formula One apparatus is just going bonkers about who's going to drive it. And I think that right now, I would say, is the biggest thing that IndyCar isn't doing. The whole of the community, I will include myself in that. Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job of stoking up stories that are, relevant and not necessarily just, tearing the sport down. 100%, I'll own that. Maybe I think that's the number one thing we can do. Yes, the social media has been a lot better. I think it's a little too clean, though. That would be the only thing I would say.
Okay. Yeah, Chase, what do you think about that? Because I agree. I know what you're saying, and I think like when you mentioned the Toro Rosso, the Visa Cash
Alpha
app,
Tari. Oh no, it's not AlphaTauri anymore.
Arby's, whatever.
Let's just call them Minardi. That's what they are. They're Minardi.
Minardi, former Minardis. Like we had that last year, right? There were drivers in and out of cars. I mean, maybe there should have been more focus on that. I completely agree with you, but it's it's a very interesting subject. If there is, we need 10 more reviews essentially. That but people, and it's not just people with 10, small video. Like it takes time to build a channel. I understand that, but if you force FS1 to carry a show every Tuesday night, remember when we had Speed Vision and you watch it, like there'd be a show every week. You'd have Dave Despain out there do some great takes on racing. You're right. We don't have that as much because any show that's out there is either F1. Well, actually, not even F1, but just NASCAR. But Chase, what do you think about that? Is that something that makes sense to you as well?
Everything that David said. I mean, these are all conversations that I know that we've had in the past a lot, and we're always brainstorming on these things, right? I think the big thing though, like when you're talking about like getting drivers to do things, like you always want to make sure that a driver's being as authentic as possible as who they are as a person. Being able to capture that is definitely more on a production team's end, something that you could do like in an aspect of finding what a driver's interests are and being able to record that or help to record that in the best way possible, because it is so much more outside of just what's happening at the track now. And when you look at NASCAR, you look at, even Formula One, it's not just video footage at a race in a car. It is, what are you doing on a Saturday? You went to the grocery store, you're going to play golf. There's so many golfers out there now. There's always room for collaboration, especially in sports. There's a lot going on with golf right now. We have a lot of golfers. That is a perfect intersection. You got guys that love football. We're on one way. We're with Fox. That's a perfect intersection. The more that we are finding ways to show other sports fans who we are and what we do, that is going to open up the intrigue for them to want to come in to IndyCar to see what IndyCar is all about, because there is still that line that is still blurry of what is IndyCar, right? Like, who is IndyCar? What is the identity of IndyCar? In my mind, you're the wild SOBs that ain't afraid to do 220 on an oval. I mean, it's like low-key psycho. Like, you hear F1 drivers, I would never do that. Like lean into it, dog. Like, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. The more that we can lean into the true identity of who IndyCar drivers are, what this sport was founded on and based on, it's all going to work itself out and get back. Now, there is time. You also have to factor in time to that. And I think that is the one thing that I've even brought up on this show before, is impatience is a problem for a lot of people. So you have to kind of carry that passion and carry that flag and understand that there are ways to do it. But the majority of it is just not being afraid of failure and getting out there and trying to just do the things that you think feel right and work right, and it will all come together in time.
I mean, that's a good way to put it. I think I personally, getting back to your point about we need drivers to say something. Now, this was I had a couple DMs with the Champ Web account on the internet recently, and he had made a statement to me about how the drivers should be coached to be certain ways. And I had a real problem with that, because I was like, wait, so you don't want us to be who we are? Now, again, I think there's probably more to it. We were going back and forth in the DMs. And again, I'm going to try to have him on the show at some point too, to discuss this. But I mean, you mentioned it yourself. The drivers need to say something. It's like, well, I mean, honestly, I don't know what else we can say. I mean, we have drivers that are getting angry at each other. Sadly, we've had a couple clean races, which isn't always the case, right? But again, maybe it's the fact, all the root of the problem becomes not enough racing at the beginning of this season, right? Because once you stop talking about the Devlin and Scott fight, which was hilarious, but again, Devlin and Scott will probably never be fighting ever again, because they're not even in the same racing category, essentially. So, but I don't know about forcing drivers to say dumb stuff. You know what I mean? Because I think people assume that, all these Formula One drivers have wild stuff to say. Honestly, they really do not. They're just people. The things that they're saying, they're actually so policed on everything that they're saying, they cannot be themselves at all. But the thing is if you said, well, Lando Norris had a ham sandwich today, he's like, why wasn't it turkey? Like, what's this guy's problem? You know what I mean? People are going crazy over the dumbest things, but maybe, I guess, is that what people need to have in IndyCar, where you just have more people talking about things that you're like, oh, what did he mean by this? Or like, maybe that's, I don't know.
Well, I think you made a really good point. I think if there were 10 people like me doing what I do, because right now, yes, like, do I kind of go back and forth with the Marshall Pruitts or the Nathan Browns of the world? For sure. But they don't really exist in my space. So
not at all. Yeah.
Yes.
Not at all.
So that's kind of where we are with, like, where I would say I am. Okay, it's great. You've got David Land, and he's willing to say outrageous things, or maybe ask a question of a driver that no one else is going to ask. And I noticed that with you guys, and I'm not saying that you guys don't, because you guys give a lot. I mean, that's something that I really appreciate. I mean, you guys could very easily treat the guy with the purple microphone like he doesn't matter, and you guys don't do that, which seriously, it means a lot to me. And that's why I try to take care of you guys and make you guys look as good as possible. But when you look at it, there isn't an ecosystem right now. And it's kind of scattershot with who are the social media people who are covering the sport. You mentioned Champ Web. Well, Champ Web's not really, nothing again. I really appreciate what they do.
It's just a Twitter account, honestly.
Exactly.
Like it's not a media member, but it's someone who posts really cool clips of old IndyCar races. And like, I know this guy, like I've met this guy before. And again, but it started to become like this really well followed account. But now he's started to kind of shoot out some takes on different things. And you're like, well, I mean, this guy's followed by a ton of people. So maybe this is someone who, obviously he's respectable because he knows the sport already and knows the history of it. But it's just interesting how like that becomes like a source of, I guess, information and maybe even like some disdain when they're like, oh, what is this all about? You know what I mean?
Well, and you've got this weird contrast right now because the social media space in IndyCar is either, and I hope I'm somewhere in the middle. I really don't necessarily want to be known as the guy. And I see the comments, everybody. I see the comments. But
yeah, well, we all get into comments.
We do, but
which is a terrible place to be sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I get a lot out of the comments.
Yeah.
It's feedback. Feedback is
good.
Positive and negative.
I agree.
There are a lot of people who are way outside of the reservation, just seemingly like kind of you and I have talked about in private. It seems like there are some people who just have it out for IndyCar, which is that's not really what I don't have it out for IndyCar. I just want IndyCar to be the thing that I fell in love with. I want it to be the pass at the corkscrew. I want it to be the Indy 500. I want it to be all these amazing things that I fell in love with as a kid and I'm doing what I'm doing now. But now you also have this contrast where, you also have the other side of it where a lot of it, and again, I think there's a place for this, but a lot of the social media content right now is not people coming in and trying to get a serious quote from the drivers or trying to build storylines or talk about, hey, what's Chevy doing? What's Honda doing? Who's going to be? It's like dancing around Stingray Robb, which there's a place for that, but there really aren't people who are on social media but are covering the race. I think now it's me, and I would like more. Like people might say, "My God, you have a monopoly. Why would you want competition?" I want competition. I want people to push me. I need it. Please come in, compete with me.
It's like you're saying, the more people that are talking about the sport is more that's going out there into the ecosystem, right? It's like we don't have that. That needs to be built, and that's something that I talk to a lot of guys about. But one thing I did want to bring up that what you're saying that I feel like is important is you talk kind of about like you don't really have a lot of people covering the sport from like the traditional media sense that we grew up with, like, in the 90s, like the ESPNs. Do you feel like that's just because so many people now that are getting, a lot of following and a lot of influence off of social media, it's almost like everything has become way more hype based than it is informational, factual based, where it's not like they want that, very kind of cut and dry coverage. They want more of just like how wild can you get on the screen in this amount of time.
There's a place for that.
So that's an interesting point. Hype based. So because the internet is essentially the wild, wild west, right? You get on Twitter, you click on one F1 Twitter tweet, and then it's your For You pages, a bunch of crazy stuff from all these accounts that have F1 drivers as their profile pictures. And you're just like, everyone is talking about it. What they're saying is completely not even true. And there could be some stuff that's just like crazy opinion. Like, if this driver did that, how could this driver, it's just, but people are talking about it. So it doesn't matter if those people are right or wrong. It really doesn't. They care enough to tweet about it. And then what they say, it might be so crazy that 10 other people are like, you're crazy. But then that generates more conversation about Formula One. And like Formula One Twitter definitely and NASCAR Twitter are wild places, completely different places. But it's hype. And there are people out there fighting for the people that they're cheering for. Whereas I feel like when I tune into there's a little bit more IndyCar Twitter action for some young folks that are getting out there. I respect that. But a lot of the times when I'm like IndyCar Twitter, it's like, well, that's dumb that the series did that, or this is crazy. How could they? Typical IndyCar. It's like, well, that's not the discussion that needs to be had. So continue, Dave. But it's hype. It's the more people are talking about it, it might be dumb what they're saying. Like maybe we do need some crazy IndyCar people who are just like, hey, we're just gonna fire off takes, and if they're completely wrong or inaccurate, it doesn't matter. At least it gets people responding. I don't know. Maybe that's how the world works.
Well, it almost seems like to me, and again, I exist in this space, right? And I think that's one of the easiest ways you can get attention in IndyCar right now is to just rip the series.
Which is so sad, by the way.
It's so sad.
Worst.
But that's that's where I kind of run into a problem is like what I've noticed is if you are kind of information fact-based, yes, of course I give opinions, but I try to make sure they're fair and fact-based when I give them. I'm not just saying, hey, I heard Connor Daly likes peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's pretty stupid.
That guy's a psycho, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't say things like that, but it's one of those things where I think we just don't have the balance right now because people to do what I do, and I think that's probably part of the reason why you don't see more David Lands out there. I'm kind of crazy for doing what I'm doing in the sport that I'm doing it in.
Oh yeah,
you know, I probably should have gone Formula One or NASCAR. I just don't love those series nearly as much. That's the issue. I love this series. I can talk about it in a very educated fashion. I at least I hope so. And
you get to be there on race weekends. You're in the paddock. You know us. You know what I mean? Like you. But
it's not easy to get there. It's not easy to get there.
You wouldn't even be allowed in the paddock, probably. I mean, they'd be like, nah, we're not letting this guy in here. You know what I mean? Like, you can't even get within 10 feet. That's why it's only basically just people outside reacting to quotes. Whereas you're going into the paddock, you're talking to the people and kind of giving out, hey, I actually am getting real information from these folks.
Yeah, and that's been something that's been really, really cool. And I don't think Formula One, you know, yes, they probably wouldn't embrace a YouTuber like IndyCar has. I think that's something that we need to give full credit for Indy, because it would be very easy for IndyCar to go, screw that guy. He rips us all the time, but they don't. And that I think is super respectable. But you're right. The IndyCar paddock has embraced the things that I do and the content that I make, and it's very humbling and very gratifying to kind of have that access, have that trust. I hear a lot of things that I don't put out there, you know, and again, it's just because seemingly, oh yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. We hear a lot of things. We ever hear a lot of things, Connor. But to be able to have that trust and be able to curate that information and get the information that needs to be gotten to the public is I don't take that lightly. It's a very high honor. So I'm very happy that I'm in this position. But I still think there are ways we can make it better for people like me. You know, the next David Land, we need to be trying to foster that, trying to find him or her, get them in the paddock. Let's get them making content, because that's only going to lift everybody up.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that really rode the F1 train, and if you discuss F1 via any type of show right now, I mean, clicks, all about the clicks. I would say even like the Fan Amp folks that I just did an interview with in Long Beach, I think those guys were doing some really cool stuff. And I, again, started with Formula One, they said, but then IndyCar gave them a lot of access, and it's really much easier to do maybe stuff with IndyCar. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, but more people should be excited about that. And I do believe, because there are more and more folks that are F1 fans that got deep into it because they're like, this is sweet, but they can't go to Bahrain or Abu Dhabi or Spa, whatever it is. So they're like, well, you know, we got this Long Beach race is sweet, you know what I mean? Or we're going to go to St. Pete. So I think we are winning over some of those folks, but I still believe we have to elevate our championship. Maybe it's elevate the stardom of a lot of our drivers. You know, Pato's a star, but we need 26 more of those guys, right? Pato right now can't walk outside of his truck. The guy can't go anywhere. He's surrounded by a mob of people. That's awesome, right? 3-time champion Alex Palou, maybe not quite as much. He can probably go to the grocery store by himself and just have a nice day. But there just needs to be more of a public knowledge that superstars like that even exist. That's purely it. And hype and maybe Alex Palou needs to say more stuff. Maybe all of us need to say more. I certainly don't. But maybe a lot of other drivers need to just continue to kind of be themselves. I don't know what the answer is. Like, I know I just say a lot, but it seems like we need to elevate the stars, and to get that, you have to have more and more people talking. You have to have a bunch of crazy Twitter accounts going nuts about their favorite drivers, and maybe that leads to more. I don't know. Maybe that leads to better TV rating.
Well, it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. And, but you talk about how, it's great that I get to go to the paddock. The sad reality right now is I haven't gone to an IndyCar race this year. I've gone to a couple of tests. I've gone to media day, but it's tough to make. I'm independent. Like I am independent. I go out of pocket to do this, and it has to make business sense. And right now, the unfortunate reality is, and this is probably part of the answer why you don't have more people talking about it. And again, it's chicken and the egg. I don't really know if we need the people talking about it first, or we need, I don't know what we need, but it's
forced creation. I don't know.
Forced creation. We'll see about that. Let's see how we can do that. But we need to figure out a way to get the interest level of the sport to a point where self-funded creators can do this. Because like you said, ESPN's not coming out to these races anymore.
No.
And that was part of why I started doing what I was doing, because I saw that gap. I said, I've always wanted an IndyCar show, and there's not an IndyCar show, and no one's making it. I'm going to make it. And, there's so much more I wish I could do as a content creator, but I also have to be realistic, and I have to put food on the table, and so I have to take care of myself. And maybe if we could kind of, and I'm not asking for special treatment, but I'm saying, I think if we can somehow get over that hump, just across the board as content creators, whether it's me or anybody else, if we can get over that hump where it is, you can make a great living talking about IndyCar racing, I think that is where you're going to see some real impact.
No, you're right. I mean that is the root of it, I think, and you nailed it, because obviously, like I've now seen like what YouTube channels can create, but the revenue that you gain from YouTube, I mean that's it. I mean it's great, but but when you start paying for flights, you start paying for hotels, you start paying for all these things, it has to be worth it. You've got the racers of the world, you've got the local, media that obviously gets paid to cover all the expenses are covered and all that stuff by the people that they work for. But you're right, you have to have these accounts that are able to be self-sustainable. And maybe, this sport has to get to that next level, which we're all trying to get it there. And hopefully then it becomes so. Like I look at it with my podcast listenership, right? We have, every month we see how many people listen to the show, and it is super consistent. But it's kind of like, remember back in the day when we would have those races that get like shifted to like CNBC or like the off networks, and we have those 350,000 IndyCar fans that always watch IndyCar racing. And like, we love those folks. It's like the same thing. I look at podcasts. I'm like, our podcast is like super consistent, and we really appreciate that. But it's very hard to kind of get that to the next level, because I just don't think enough people know about the content that can be consumed. And so once we get to a level, and maybe that starts with Fox, right? Maybe we have this really strong month of May, and we got 3 races in a row, 4 weekends on track, qualifying included. You've got all this stuff. And then you kind of elevate it to like, well, IndyCar's happening all the time. We got to keep consuming that stuff. I don't know. I personally think we've all agreed on the schedule being the issue on the front end. And I think it's been more evident than ever. And I think our upper echelon folks have realized that too. But I have another question for you that I think is very interesting that I not discovered recently, but I just kind of thought of in a different light. We talk about manufacturers and how we need more in the sport. Honda's been the one that people are talking about, like, oh, we got to keep them in, or we gotta have this or that. Chevy seems to be pretty stoked about IndyCar. They're here. Obviously, we don't know how stoked they are, but like they're here. They're not being talked about as potentially leaving. Here's an interesting question: if, like, let's say Honda leaves, but another manufacturer replaces them, is that as bad? I thought the other day, and I was like, okay, if Honda are really kind of not in a good spot, and they're like, you know what, it's time to maybe go, but they're immediately replaced by a new manufacturer, is that as bad of a situation? Or what do you think on that? Because I actually was kind of like, I don't mind if let's say we call that a worst case, it's not the worst case scenario, but it's an interesting one. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I speak for everybody right now that we really hope we don't lose Honda, because I think, I mean, you look at Honda.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I agree.
When they came into the sport is 1994. That's when it all started going downhill. They've been with us through thick and thin. Mm-hmm. It would not be good if they left. There's no doubt about it. And like you say, it's not worst case scenario, but it's bottom 5 if they leave. I would love to see a new manufacturer come in. Ideally, they're a third, not a second. The problem right now is, and you know this, and I think everybody knows this, I'm not saying anything that is outside of, the ballpark right now, is that we don't know what the regulations are for 27 or 28 or whenever it is. And you look at all these series that are bringing manufacturers in, they've established what their formula is, and they've said, this is what we're doing. Come in, come one, come all, join us. And right now, and I don't know why, and again, I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers, because I don't. But what I can't understand is why we haven't just said, here's what we're doing. Come on, come one, come all, come in. I don't know. And in some ways,
I don't know if it's that easy.
No. Yeah. I want to make sure that we're not making it sound easy. But I mean, it just feels like sometimes there's not as much forward momentum, at least publicly, on that as I would like to see. Because the cars, at the end of the day, they're not a football. And they're such an important aspect of this sport. For many people, they're the first thing that attracts them. I think they come for the cars and stay for the drivers. That's what I've always kind of looked at for racing. I think you're attracted to the sights and the sounds, and then you stay for the personalities that we're able to show off here in the sport. And so I would like to see the cars treated a little bit more like they're important, because they absolutely are. And maybe if you get to that point, maybe you will attract more manufacturers, because again, right now, how often do we actually talk about the battle between Chevy and Honda? How often do we kind of lift them up and say, they're spending a lot of money. They're really pushing each other. And I think that's something maybe, again, as a media person, we could do a better job of, is lifting them up and talking about them and saying, what's new on your engine? What are you guys doing that they're not doing? Now, are they going to shoot us straight? Probably not. But there's another part of me, and I'll give you a hot take here, Connor.
Okay, hot take season.
I'm going to ask a question that maybe is tough to answer, and maybe takes us to a tough place.
Oh.
Should IndyCar be as reliant on OEMs as they are? Because if you look at the past of racing, and of course the past is the past, we can learn from it, but it doesn't necessarily apply now. We haven't always had to badge engines. We've had Offenhausers, and we've had Cosworths, and we've had Ilmores. Do we need OEMs? Could we go to a different business model, maybe something similar to sprint cars where you build your own stuff? Or maybe there's I hate to say a spec engine, but maybe it's a spec engine that sounds really good, that would maybe bring some of those disillusioned Formula One fans in. Now, the manufacturers spend an awful lot of money, and it would be very hard to totally, send them on their way. I don't think that's what we should be doing. But maybe there's an option somewhere where we look and try to be less reliant on OEMs in some way. I don't know. That's something that I've thought about sometimes. I get it's a hot take, but I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Connor.
That's interesting. I mean, I've lived through many eras, Infinity engines, Oldsmobiles, you know what I mean? All kinds of stuff. The Infinity Pro series. I mean, who would have thought that was a real thing? I do believe there has to be some sort of manufacturer support. I do believe, though, after kind of hearing a lot more recently and kind of just getting into the weeds a little bit, I think there are more people that are excited about, not necessarily getting super into we need electricity and hybrid technologies. I think there's a lot of that is good for manufacturers, but I think people have realized that I don't know if having a hybrid element to your race car is what's leading to car sales. But if maybe having something that's awesome, maybe that is. Clearly in IMSA, something must be doing it because those cars are awesome. Yeah, there's a hybrid element, but like that's just sweet. And so no one's. I guarantee no one's showing up to the Aston Martin dealership asking like, "Where's your hybrid button?" It's like, no. Does this thing got a V12 in it? Heck yeah! All right, we're gonna buy that. You know what I mean?
That's what they want.
I think so. I could be wrong.
Well, so if you're trying to keep Honda, and I can tell you because they've told me specifically, you need a hybrid. Okay.
Well, no. So, and I understand that, but I can't say everything that I know because I think there's more than that going on in the background. But it wouldn't feel like IndyCar if Honda is not here. It certainly would not. But there's also. I don't know. I'm okay with maybe a new era of IndyCar where it's like, all right, we got Chevy and maybe maybe there is two others that might be something different. I'm okay with that too. I was just thinking about this the other day and I was like, you know what? I can't picture IndyCar without Honda. I can't picture IndyCar without Honda. But then I do believe that there is actually more interest in OEMs coming into the sport than might be public because that's just not how business works. You got to get this stuff done behind the scenes. You got to do all this, you got to make sure everyone's pumped about it. And we've got to get through this summer in probably a really strong way too. And that will obviously help. But I think once we get through the summer, and I believe that the series is going to be in a position to where you talk about regulations. We got to figure out what we want. I think they can do that in a week. I think it can be like, hey, you know what? Maybe even a couple days. Be like, all right, we're going to go with this. But I think they're going to have to. I think IndyCar is a series, and I'm all for this. I think they just tell the teams what we're doing. Like, yep, you got to buy a new car. Yep, we're doing this with the engine. Sorry, or not sorry, but like, hope you're excited because we are. You know what I mean? I think that's what's going to have to happen. And I know a lot of team owners. I haven't seen any of them struggling to pay rent, so I think they're going to be okay. And again, maybe they don't like me saying that, but I know for a fact that they're doing okay. So I think that's what should happen. But do you agree on the fact that maybe we finally kind of got around that corner of like everything's got to be efficient and there's got to be cool logos that are green and all this stuff and maybe hybriding and then now you're like, well, that engine sounds pretty sweet though. And then maybe that's what sells cars.
Well, here's what I would pitch. Here's my pitch because I think you can have your cake and eat it too. Why not tell Honda, if you want to keep running a hybrid, you can absolutely run a hybrid.
Well, yeah, there's that, yeah.
And you tell Chevy or another manufacturer, if you don't want to run a hybrid, you don't have to run a hybrid. Let's write some rules. Let's set a weight. Let's set an aerodynamic package, and let's go racing. Here's the thing: you go back to like the '60s, and what was
can't
something?
Go back there.
Well, you can't go back to the '60s, but you look to the past to kind of bring something into the future. What did everybody? Something that attracted people to Indianapolis was the battle between the front and the rear engine cars. There were the new fans that loved the rear engine cars because they were technologically advanced, and there were people that loved the front engine cars because they were the traditional Indy cars. What if we brought that back? We can have your hybrid haters.
It's innovation.
And we can have your hybrid lovers. We can have them race on track and decide what's the best technology for the way forward. We can decide that on the racetrack. Honda can go, we won the Indy 500 with a hybrid and all these dinosaurs finished behind us. Or you could have Chevy or Alfa Romeo or Aston Martin or Dodge or whoever go, we won the Indy 500 with a big, heavy Chevy, and we told those green guys to go, jump off a bridge, It would be, you want to talk about marketing a series? That would be fun. That would be awesome. I can tell you as a media person, to have that battle, I would eat that up. That would give us something to talk about every week. There's no doubt about it.
You're talking about
Chase,
innovation.
What do you think?
Yeah. It's just the innovation element, right? Like the way, I'm listening to what both of you guys are saying, and the way that I look at it is, what can you offer OEMs? What are you doing internally that will attract the OEM to want to work with you that they currently are not doing? We're entering a future right now where we do not know what things may look like with racing in the next 10 to 15 years. If we're starting on something new and embarking on a brand new journey where we don't even know what the final product's going to look like, you just kind of have to get started. That intrigue and that mystery right there, I feel like is enough to bring in these car companies. Like right now, a lot of the stuff I do in the back end of just me personally, I love AI. And when you're looking at AI, NVIDIA right now, they just got a partnership with GM. Tesla has been building all of their models for autonomous driving. We don't want autonomous driving in IndyCar.
Nope.
We don't want a robot driving in IndyCar. We want a human being in a car going fast. The hybrid element thing that you're talking about, I think it's a cool component. That's great. But if it's doing things that aren't helping the driver, who is it good for? And the way that I see this is I think that there is a way to create something entirely new that you can offer to OEMs that they can use in their day-to-day products. This isn't NASCAR where you have this stock build where you can make the car look like the car on the road. That's been their business model for years. They've been able to have the Monte Carlo, the SS, all that. That's how they market this car. You're not seeing open-wheel cars out there unless you're rolling around in a Can-Am on the interstate. So we don't have Can-Am in IndyCar. So you've got not yet. Not yet. I like that.
That's their manufacturer.
Can-Am. Let's go.
So it's like, it doesn't really matter who it is. What it does matter is what can we start doing inside of IndyCar that is going to make OEMs be like, I want a piece of that. I want a part of that. I want to get involved with what they're doing. That's what's going to pull it in. What that is, there is so many things it could be. There really are. So it's just,
I hope it's the Indy 500. I mean, honestly, I hope that alone is what, is what brings. I think if that's powerful enough, like if you go through this year, let's say this year it's a banger, right? Like we sell out. Let's say, like, I'm hoping for a sellout. I think that's huge. I would love to see that. You know what? I might buy 5,000 tickets if I have to. Actually, I can't afford it because I'm not making any money.
That's
but
wild.
If I was making a living, I would do that just to help sell it out, and then I'd give them away to fans. But sadly, we need more sponsors for that first. But if it's a sellout, if we get, no rain delays, everything's locked in. We got, Kyle Larson's already been in the wall. Now people can talk about it, right? That's a great story. Takuma Sato launched his car into the wall like a rocket ship. Great story to talk about. And I think all of this stuff, and Fox is kind of build. I love what Fox is doing. I really do think that they're doing a ton, but it's still not on the main. You know what I watched last night, David? I watched the Barber race from last year on YouTube. All right. You know what the ad was every 30 seconds? Lando Norris telling me about eBay Motors. And I was like, all right, well, I want to see, like, dude, you know how many people use YouTube? And I've not seen one IndyCar ad on YouTube, right? And IndyCar is pushing their YouTube channel. They're doing a great job. Honestly, the fact that you can watch everything on YouTube is great. But every ad that's tailored to me, which clearly I consume a lot of racing content, is Formula One. But you can pay for that stuff. Like, you can buy those ad spaces. Now, again, eBay was the one who was doing the ad, but it's still Lando Norris. And there wasn't any different ads for the entire 2-hour race. It was Lando Norris, eBay, Lando Norris, eBay, Lando Norris, eBay. And I'm like, I tell you what, maybe we slide in a couple, hey, IndyCar on Fox this weekend. I don't know. I think that's got to be, that type of marketing, I still think is something that we are missing, is just kind of the mainstream, maybe younger consumables, not necessarily TV commercials, but I always talk about we got to buy time on Pardon My Take, right? Biggest sports podcast in the world. They have NASCAR ads every week, right? Now they have a deal with NASCAR. NASCAR pays them, but like, that is the biggest sports podcast. And is it humorous? Yes. Dave Portnoy has been to the Indy 500 before. A lot of people have different opinions on Barstool Sports, but it is a huge, just group of sports fans that are looking right now for sports to consume. And we need to be that sport that people are consuming, as long as we're not going up against NASCAR on a Sunday or a Saturday, whatever it is.
Well, that's something that maybe, I don't know how they would pull it off, but maybe that's an avenue. Maybe that's how you create a few more David Lands, is you have a correspondent with Barstool. You have a correspondent with the Pat McAfee show. They do like a 2-minute segment. That's it. Or they're creating social media content, but you get them out there.
I don't care if it costs $100,000. Get a guy on the Pat McAfee show every week, because they already kind of talk about Formula One with Darius Butler, and like Darius, nice guy, but like, dude, you're in Indiana. Like, we should have a segment. We should have something. And Pat's a businessman. He gets it. Like, be like, hey, you know what, Pat? If you need $250,000 to talk about this every week, maybe that's cool. You know what I mean?
They already do a lot of
sweet.
IndyCar stuff too.
I mean, so in the month of May, like a little bit. Yeah.
But they need someone on the ground. They need someone at Barber. They need someone at Laguna Seca. They need someone at Milwaukee to go, hey, like this is really badass.
Barstool has a whole NASCAR podcast. They have Rubbin' Is Racing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But what I would like to see is someone on the ground creating content constantly that we can talk about. Because if that starts a content ecosystem, algorithms, we talk about them, they're so important. Maybe Chase can expand on those a little bit. That's so important. It's almost like Darrell Waltrip's vortex theory. You got to get it going first. Yep. You got to get that twist. And if you don't have enough people blowing hot air into the algorithm, nothing's going to be seen. There's not going to be a lot of discussion. There aren't going to be people intrigued to tune in to a race. But if you get
firing out crazy takes.
Exactly.
Firing out crazy takes.
You need 3 or 4 blowhards to get that thing going, and it'll start going. Trust me.
Up.
I hope so. I mean, this is something, obviously, we've been talking for a while already, and it's really just been a conversation, because I think a lot of us, just like me specifically, one of the reasons I had you on is because I do feel as though there has been so much negativity around IndyCar this year after we started with so much to be excited about. You know what I mean? Like, I think with the Super Bowl commercial, with the Fox thing, I mean, dude, I had texts from people, like I've said this on the show before, during the Super Bowl, like, oh man, IndyCar looks sweet. You know what I mean? And again, we cannot fix the schedule. The schedule is completely the issue. And have we had 2 really clean races? Yeah, that's tough. But we're going to run into a race where it's going to be crazy. There's going to be some yellows. There might even be some red flags. And we just got to take advantage of all those moments. I wish there were, onboard clips like Takuma Sato's crash at the Indy test. Dude, that thing blew up on the internet. Every time someone crashes, if they don't have an onboard camera, we put that thing up there. You know what I mean? Like NASCAR does now. Every single car has an onboard camera. It might not be a TV camera, might not be an official TV camera, but NASCAR then has access to all of those cameras so they can put out clips. Like the Bubba Wallace restart clip was sweet. I watched it. He passed 10 cars in the last lap. That was cool. There's so many of those moments happening in IndyCar. You could pick out 10 and post one each day. And again, they do that with the official onboard cameras that everyone pays $300,000 for the year for. But again, maybe it is that putting out that type of content, putting out that type of stuff will help kind of generate more hype. Because at the beginning of the year, gosh, we were super pumped. St. Pete was awesome. And it went sharply downhill, but I hate to see how much crap IndyCar has been given by a lot of people, honestly. And David, it's not you. Like, again, you put out a plenty of stuff that is like, hey, this is what's going on in IndyCar. And we talk about the reality of the situation too on this show. And we can't wait for it to be on the moon. But I think there are a lot of people that when they see so much just kind of crap being thrown IndyCar's way, it's super easy for everyone to just be like, yeah, typical, instead of oh, actually, no, I thought it was cool. I think IndyCar's sweet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
No, 1,000%. And well, the first thing I want to say is I don't think there's one magic bullet that's going to save it. I think
of course not.
We have brought up in this call, I think, is a super productive discussion, and I hope the right people hear it, because I think if you do all of the things that we've suggested, you need to get the hardcore fans excited with technology, but you also need to be able to reach out to the broader sports fans and be able to bring them in through other shows. You need to have people like David Land at races all the time. All of these things you need to do. But I'll tell you, with the negativity, it's a difficult position right now with IndyCar and negativity, because we can't ignore reality as
no, of course not.
people, right? And the reality is that there are some things that very much concern me about the future of the sport. Being a historian, being someone who's loved this my entire life, there are things that concern me. But at the same time, I feel like I always shoot IndyCar very straight. When everybody wanted to hate the thermal race, I was one of the few people that said, that was actually what else do you want in the finish? That was so exciting.
But that's created, again, you know why that's created, though? Is it because it was cool to hate thermal last year? Like, it became the cool thing on the internet to just hate thermal. Okay, yeah. Did they not have cheap tickets? Yeah, of course. Okay, I understand that. But, who had pretty reasonably priced tickets? Texas Motor Speedway, and no one showed up there. So, I will not take that argument for, we couldn't go. We had plenty of races people could go to. I'm not going to lie. Plenty of races, and they're no longer on the schedule. So, that is a problem, I believe.
Well, and the loss of Texas hurts because imagine
everyone. It hurts everyone. Yeah.
Imagine if we'd gone to Texas the week before thermal, or the week after thermal, because then people wouldn't have had as much time to just hate on thermal. And 100%. Here's the thing about thermal, and I've had some great opportunities with the people over there. I think they get a bad rap a lot of the time.
I agree,
but there's no doubt about it that, number one, thermal left a bad first impression on people, which is always very, very difficult. Trust me, I've left some bad first impressions on people. It's very tough to come out of that and prove yourself to people who are like, oh, screw this, screw this. We're not going to. But I think that the big thing with thermal and what I would like to see them do is I think there is a way that they can work on their messaging a little bit better to feel more accessible, even if they aren't. And you're 100% right when you say that, Connor, that most people aren't going to be able to buy a ticket to thermal anyway, because if they could buy a ticket to thermal, you would see a massive crowd at Laguna Seca. You would have seen a massive crowd at Fontana. You didn't see that. There's just not that. Now, Long Beach, that's the Indy 500 West. There's a difference there. But you would see those people. You would see the crowds out west. You don't see that. So they're not going to come out there anyway. Why are you tearing that race down just because you can't get out there? That's what I don't understand. And that's something that, again, I think thermal could control the messaging a little bit better. They could maybe do some things, out of their way to kind of make the fan experience better for the people who aren't going to thermal. There are some things they could do that I would like to see them do, because, again, I think thermal is getting a bad rap, and they had what I thought to this point is the most exciting race of the year, which I don't know how we feel about that, but that is what it is.
I would agree. No, I think it was for me as from the driver as well. I thought it was the most exciting race that I've been a part of. So I mean, we could talk about this for forever, but I wanted to get your thoughts on a lot of those things. And again, these are things that we want to see folks engage with us on. Obviously, on your channel, on my channels, the podcast platforms, because I do believe that there's a lot of information that people just kind of assume about IndyCar that might not actually even be right. And so if I engage with people on the internet, I'm trying to be like, hey, I mentioned this in our last show. I'm like, this might be something you just didn't know. And you know a lot of the things that people don't know because you're in the paddock. But before we go, because we've taken up some of your time, Indy test was last week. We obviously know Indy 500, pretty big deal. Can you give us a top three prediction in no particular order? Like right out the gate, right after the test, give us a in no particular order, top three prediction. And I'll let Chase ask you another question too, if he's got one.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to say something positive about IndyCar.
All right.
Thank you for streaming that both days of that test on YouTube. That is what part of how I became who I am, was complaining that they weren't streaming things on YouTube when they should have. So I need to make, because you look at the numbers, and those are TV numbers that they did. Hundreds of thousands of people tuned in for that. That is great for the sponsors. That's great for the manufacturers. That's great for the sport. More of that, please. We love it. I would say, coming out of the Indy test, Scott McLaughlin is still just as strong as he was last year. Remember, he had a clutch issue that really took him out of the race last year. It wasn't anything that he did. It wasn't anything that
his car was. He was still loose. He was a little loose at one point. I was right behind him.
You're right behind him. Okay.
Yeah, he was definitely a little loose towards the end, but yes, very fast.
I think Scott McLaughlin, and quite honestly, everybody was kind of talking about Team Penske. I'm sure you heard a lot of the same things that I heard.
Just wait till you hear this episode.
Okay, well then they've got a little something extra that they're not showing, and that's part of the game. I was super impressed with the Rahal team. It looks like that they might actually be back. We'll see. I don't know if I'm willing to put them in the top 3, but I think I should give them a shout out. I think Kyle Kirkwood is really strong. And this is something that I think a lot of people look past. But if you forget him going upside down in 2023, he was right there in the mix and charging when that was happening. And if you watch the race back last year, Kyle Kirkwood, all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, is right there at the end in the mix to win the race. And if it's not Kirkwood and if it's not Scott McLaughlin, I don't want to talk about it.
No, you got to pick 3. Doesn't matter, no particular order.
I have to pick 3. I won't pick Joseph, but I will say that Joseph, I think, has the best chance, maybe ever, to be a 3rd winner in a row.
Oh, man. I love Joseph, but I certainly hope not.
I know. I know.
We're going to try our best.
Well, and Connor, you didn't look too bad either. I will say that. It looked like that car was pretty well put together. I know our friend Augustine Canapino had it up front last year, so that's a strong steed that you got there.
Lots changed.
A lot has changed. A lot has changed. But then we like change. It makes it unpredictable.
Yep.
You know what? Alex Palou.
Okay.
It's got to be the year at some point, right?
Scott, Alex, and Kyle Kirkwood, those are your 3.
I know, I'm really sticking my neck out. All right.
No, I mean, honestly, that's solid. That's solid. Yeah, you'll have to listen to this episode because we got deep into the. I have some things that I want to share about this test, and it might not excite people, but there could also be some. I give out some wild predictions today. I'm going to give out some wild predictions.
I can't wait to hear it. It's going to be, I listen for sure. It's kind of scary that I went after Danny Sullivan and Kyle Kirkwood. I feel like one of these things is not like the other. So I'm definitely honored that you asked me on, for sure.
Hey, again, this YouTube stuff, dude, I don't think people realize how big it is when you hit that 100K mark. I mean, that's a big deal. I see streamers all the time. I watch YouTube all day long. That's all I watch. And when people hit 100K, I mean, they're having parties, celebrating. And that is a viewership that is really powerful. And we've got now drivers, David Malukas is on YouTube. Scott McLaughlin started up his YouTube channel. I've been trying, obviously, by myself. Those guys have editors that they pay and actually do real stuff. I'm out here with my camera right here, and that's all I got. But, and thank you, producer Bobby, as well. He's the only one who saved my life where I would have no YouTube channel because he's been putting everything together for me. But we're just a 2-man team, and I'm just basically firing them off a Dropbox link and say, hey, I hope you can put these together like an old school home video. But what David Malukas is doing is good. What Scott McLaughlin is doing is good. I think shower YouTube with more and more content that isn't what is it, narrowed down to the U.S. only? Can't have that either. But yeah, I hope we continue to kind of show how powerful YouTube is and maybe get some more ads on there too. Chase, you have anything, final thoughts for David here?
For people that find this show that are just kind of hopping on the IndyCar, train this year, I know we do have some newer listeners that are coming on. I'm curious to know, aside from Long Beach and Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indy 500, what is one race that new IndyCar fans must go to, in your opinion?
It's a good question.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, baby.
Without a doubt. Obviously, because Connor Daly made that entire race last year. Let's be honest. It was a snoozer. It was a snoozer without him on the top. But no, seriously. I think if you want to go to a race where you have the history and tradition of the Speedway, but you have the excitement of a Saturday night short track race at your local, fairgrounds, the Milwaukee Mile. I pushed for it for a very long time. Last year was the first time I've ever been at the Milwaukee Mile. It feels right. It is exciting racing. IndyCar, you will see more IndyCar specific fans, more IndyCar merch, more of your people at Milwaukee. If you're a new IndyCar fan and you want that experience where you feel welcome, you feel like you're a part of the team, and you're there with 20,000 of your closest friends, it's the Milwaukee Mile.
Yeah, I like that. I like that take, honestly. I mean, Milwaukee's fantastic. Can't wait till we get places like Richmond back on the schedule. We're going to go ahead and speak that into existence. That'd be nice. Maybe get that on there.
Michigan.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, man.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to the moon next week. Yeah, that's about how possible that is. But anyway,
we got to manifest it. We got to manifest it, Connor.
Yeah, I dream a lot about going to the moon, David. I would love to be up there on a spaceship. That'd be sweet. Find the aliens.
Out.
Like, that's going to be awesome. Yeah. But man, if I somehow live to see the day that IndyCar goes back to Michigan International Oval Racing Speedway, that'd be sweet. I certainly won't be alive for that long, really, in life. But if I make it that far, where we see IndyCars doing 230 plus in Michigan, that'd be sweet.
You have to wear an astronaut suit when you go. That's
I will.
Deal.
Yeah. I'll watch it from the moon. Actually, that's what I will do.
Hell yeah.
Doug, we need to make this happen. I need to see Connor in space.
Doug's got a lot of work to do, dude. He's trying his butt off. That guy. I tell you what,
he's the right guy. I tell you what, I'll say some more positivity there. I don't think there's a better guy. I don't think there's a better guy right now for that spot than Doug. I really believe in him. I agree. I hope that I'm looking forward to seeing his direction as time goes on, because he gets it. He loves it the same way I, and everybody else watching this does. So I believe in Doug Bowles. I'll say funny. It. Endorsement.
First thing, I met up with Colton after the Thursday Indy test, and first thing he said to me, he's like, "Hey, you talk to Doug about the car? Maybe like see if we can do something to, help the racing." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Me? No, I am the last person that I'm not going to go straight to Doug's office and be like, hey, we got to fix the downforce levels here." No, he's got way more to worry about than what I have to say, and he is much smarter than dealing with me. So yeah. But it is funny how people interact with me now sometimes. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not out here. I don't have any takes that are allowed to be in that office. That's for sure.
Wait a second. Colton was complaining about the super speedway package. He never does that. What are you talking about?
Hey, we're just trying to make the race better. We're just trying to make the race better.
Please do. I think we all want to see. I mean, that's the thing is I guess I'll ask you this last question, Connor. What do we have to do to not make it a fuel-safe train at the Indy 500? Because to me, I think this should be a 500-mile flat-out race. And you hear all the NASCAR fans complaining about how Talladega is. Well, unfortunately, Indy 500 right now is a little bit Talladega-y. What do we have to do to make it less of that train racing?
I mean, dude, it's always been that way. Every single 500 I've ever done, though, and I've been through 5 iterations of this car, maybe whatever it is, the same chassis. I think my chassis number is 004. So like I've got like all the OG. I've been in all the Delaras, except for the older the previous DW12. But there's always going to be that fuel saving element, because that's just racing strategy. Unless you ban fuel, and like you can't do that. Obviously, like we're not like you're going to have to save fuel at some point. I believe that the way this race has worked out, the people in the mid pack. Here's the thing. If you had people that had the ability to race their way through the mid-pack a little bit easier to get to the front, then it would be less of a focus on the fuel save. Because right now, it's so hard to pass that all you're doing is fuel saving, so then you could take advantage of the time when you get the clear track. So that is something that I believe would help eliminate the fuel strategy talk. But obviously, just adding downforce isn't the way to do it either. So we've got to get to a place where this car races a little bit better, and I don't know when that will be. But right now, maybe tire wear helps us. Maybe the last 10 laps of these stints, honestly, with the way those tires were going off, that could make it exciting as well. So you got to go through just basically the first 15 to 20 laps of each stint, and then things could get pretty spicy. So that's my opinion. That's my take.
Sounds like a problem that would be solved with a new car.
Well, we all want a new car. I don't think that solves any of the problems. It solves hardcore fan problems, and I hope I get to drive a new car. That'd be sweet. I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. But yes, we need a new car, new engines, all kinds of stuff. But David, thank you for being on the show. If you don't subscribe to David's channel, I mean, you probably should. There's a lot of information on there. He gets into the weeds. So yeah, David, we appreciate you being on this show. Hopefully it was a fine discussion. I don't know what people are going to think of this. I feel like we just talked about IndyCar for a while.
Well, I would certainly hope that people who are tuning into the Speed Street podcast, and you subscribe to the Speed Street podcast as well if you're coming over here first time and checking it out. 100%. Listen,
That'd
Connor,
This
you
is
scratch
the
my
only way I
back,
make
I'll
money
scratch
currently.
here. Well, there you go. Hey, same. It's unbelievable. You and I, we aren't so different. But no, it's an honor, Connor. I mean, honestly, there are people in this sport that I really respect and appreciate because you guys have helped my career. You're one of those people, and I think you know that, and it really means a lot to me. And that the little old YouTuber gets to come in here and talk to IndyCar drivers. I think it's really cool, and it's not something that I take for granted. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. And you know what? It's just nice to know that there are other people out there that sometimes get it. I think we're blocked by the same people, honestly, on a few different accounts on the internet. So you know what? That's cool. If we're blocked by the same people on the internet, then that means we're on the same team. So that's I think there's some funny situations like that. But anyway, thank you, David, for being on this show. Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed that conversation. Honestly, very passionate. All of us very passionate about just taking this sport to kind of a new level. And I think over the next 4 or 5 shows, probably 6 shows, we'll definitely have a race winner on each week. Maybe after Indy 500 qualifying weekend, we'll have the pole sitter on, or just anyone, any driver who might have had an exciting qualifying story to tell. But we're just having a conversation. David's got a large following on the YouTube. We need to have more IndyCar YouTube content. We need to have more people just creating content for IndyCar that people want to consume. And, we got to have more hype, as we have discovered. So appreciate David Land for jumping on the show. Now, it's race week, baby. But that also means it's time for another Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week.
The greatest event of its kind has never been run on.
Let's meet the drivers. We'll make up the field.
This week, we go all the way back to the 1937 Indianapolis 500, which was won by Wilbur Shaw, who my helmet for the Indy 500 is honoring Wilbur Shaw this year. We'll just wait till you see that. It's going to be sick. We went to the 23rd place finisher. The 23rd place finisher, Frank Briscoe, is this week's Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week. Frank Stanley Briscoe, oh boy. I don't know if you guys get on Wikipedia like me, but if you want me to really try to pronounce his name, Chase, I don't know if you see this on the Wikipedia, but
I'm getting it pulled up.
This is apparently an American race car driver, and I don't know if this is a real thing. It says Frank Stanley Briscoe was born Stanislaw Franciszek Brusichinski.
Wow.
So Briscoe was born in Poland, obviously. Chase, if you want to make a pronunciation of that name, maybe you can try. Obviously, you can tell that he was not born in the U.S., born in Poland. He grew up in Chicago, though, and later moved to Milwaukee. Originally a motorcycle racer, a two-wheel guy. Ran in the Indy 500 12 times. Wow, this is wild. This is one where you're like, oh, who is this? And then you realize they've got a ton of Indy 500s. Best finish looks like ninth, couple ninth place finishes. He did start on the front row, it looks like. Twice, started on the front row twice. So that's kind of cool. 1929 through 1941. What a career at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So Frank Briscoe. Do you see that name on the Wikipedia?
I have it pulled up now, and it's very intimidating when you're staring at it.
Yeah, a lot of letters.
He should have stayed with Stanislaw. Stanislaw Franciszek Brusichinski.
Yep,
that's
our
the
guy.
way I would say it. So Stanislaw, but shout out to Frank Stanislaw. I would call him Stan. I would have went with Stanislaw if I were him. I think that would have been the way.
Stan Frank, yeah.
Frank, dude.
Stan Frank. Oh yeah,
yeah.
Wow, that's wild. Anyway, Love the Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week. Really, really enjoy that segment of our show. So thank you guys for watching this week. Honestly, we've got a great race ahead. Please tune into Barber. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the race that's coming up this week. I think it's one we can be all jacked up about. There's a Buc-ee's and a Bass Pro Shops all within the vicinity of Barber Motorsports Park. So
I will be around
we
with
know
stickers.
that means, we know that means it's going to be great. Chase is going to be there as well. I'm going to be there. So we'll see you there. This has been a great episode, long episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week on Speed Street with the winner of the Barber Motorsports Park event. Hopefully it's me. Hey everyone, Connor Daly here. Please leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That would be very helpful. Be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Speed Street.